In 1893, W.J. Gordon estimated that there were 9,000 cabs in London. Now, 2 out of 3 cabs use 2 horses, which means there were 15,000 horses needed just for cabs alone in London on any given day. And by the 1890s, you had new Victorian inventions like the horse bus and the horse tram to help transport the poor, and of course many horses were needed to transport goods. And if you just say take the horse bus, about 12 horses were needed for them, and there were thousands of them on the streets as well. Now, nobody knows the exact figures, but as a ballpark figure, some people have estimated that there were 300,000 horses in London on any given day, transporting people and goods. Now, I'm not sure what your first question would be about that, but let's just assume it is, where did they sleep? Well, in wealthy areas you had mews, which were small alleyways designed just for horses and stables. Well, on the street the houses were 2-storied. On the upstairs would be, more often than not, the people who worked with the horses, and the downstairs would be the horses. Now, these streets were often cobblestoned, and today they're quite expensive. But if you pull up a map of Kensington in West London and look around Cromwell Road, you'll see many street names named after mews, and this is because these were streets designed exclusively for horses. Otherwise, most industries and businesses had their own stables. For instance, St Pancras Station had its own stables, and near Paddington was the Mint Stables, which was a 3-storey stable that could house hundreds of horses. And there also seems to be another multi-storied stable over in Southwark. And some high street buildings also just served as stables. For instance, the building next door to the Cross Keys on Endell Street seems to have once housed a camel. But if you look at it on Google Maps today, you'll see that it's now a gay sauna and massage place called The Stables. And other times the horses were stored underground, like in the Camden Catacombs, which weren't really catacombs, but a series of underground tunnels that housed, again, hundreds of horses. Plus, you also had coaching inns, which used to house teams of horses both inside and outside of London, and they were essential to travel in centuries gone by, because they would replace your tired horse with a fresh new one. Now, I'm going to assume that your next question is, where did they die? And it's estimated that around 400 horses died every week in London on the streets with exhaustion, but they were quickly taken away because there was money in dead horses. In fact, knackers, a person who traded in rendering animals, is where you get the term knackered, meaning tired. But in London there are about 20 to 30 slaughterhouses, and the largest on Garrett Lane processed about 26,000 horses a year. Now, to try and briefly summarise the whole process, the large slaughtering houses had contracts with big companies, and they would buy the old and lame horses. Collectors would then go and get the horses and march about 15 of them at a time to the slaughterhouse, tied nose to tail. On entering the slaughterhouse, the horse would have its mane cut off and its hair would be used in mattresses, and in about 30 minutes the horse would be killed and most of the products would be prepped. Its hooves would be turned into glue, its skin would be made into leather, its bones would be ground up into manure, and the meat would be sold as pet food, although some people speculate that it was also sold to humans as well. And I'll assume that your last question is, where did they go to the toilet? Well, this one's quite simple because they just went on the streets. So that's thousands of gallons of horse urine and around 1,000 tons of horse dung were dropped off on the streets every single day. Now, in centuries gone by, a lot of people did depend on human and animal waste for their job. For instance, there were gong farmers, people who used to remove human waste from the city, and in Henry Mayhew's report on London poor in 1850, he said that pure finders, as they were called, used to sell dog waste to tanners. And some people were employed to remove manure, well, horse manure specifically, from the streets of London, but these were mainly children employed by the rich to sweep the road in front of them, and it only cleared that small section of road. However, the Great Manure Crisis, as it was called, was spreading disease and sort of became unmanageable. In fact, the Times in 1894 predicted that by 1950, most major cities in the world would be buried beneath 9 feet of dung, and town planners were at a bit of a loss as how to deal with this problem, but luckily for them, the car was invented.